Welcome, everyone, to the Boardroom Brain podcast. I am so thrilled you're joining me today. We have had so many great guests on the show lately, and we are continuing with that today. I am thrilled to get to introduce to you Leah Dunmore. Let me tell you a little bit about her. As a mastermind of innovation, Leah Dunmore has managed and scaled growth across a variety of iconic brands such as M&M's, Windex, Ziploc, and Kraft Cheese. She leads with a people-first approach and has mastered the ability to use consumer insights to drive aggressive results across multiple businesses. She currently leads as CEO of Delica North America, a company bringing in over $100 million in annual sales, and a producer of delicious snacks, cooking products, and coffee. She recently relaunched the regional Niagara chocolates into a national retail and direct-to-consumer brand, which has transformed the brand from double-digit declines to 92% growth year to date. Oh my gosh, that's amazing, those stats. Everything you've done, Leah. Wow, we are thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, we've
Oh,
done some great things that the team and I have done some great things with Niagara Chocolates and the whole company, quite frankly.
clearly. Well, we are so excited to hear about all of it today. One thing we love to do to kick our show off, I love to read. I love to find out what people are learning about, and our listeners love to as well. So tell us, Leah, is there a book that you read recently, or maybe a podcast episode, anything lately that's really inspiring your work and how you like to live your life?
That's a good question. I'm usually reading a couple of things at a time, and so recently I've been reading a book on leadership. It's called the New Leadership 90 Day. Believe it or not, it's kind of like the 90-day action plan. Even though I'm well into 90 days, I always like to kind of look at how you should kind of start over with a team, with a new project, and so that's what I've been reading lately. So.
Oh, I love it. Okay, we will include that in the show notes. It's always good to come at it with that fresh lens, that learner's mindset. So I love that 90 days of leadership. And, one thing that really stood out to me as I always like to research our guests before they come on the show is this people first approach you have. And so I want to hear more about what that means to you and how you put that into practice at Delica.
So I believe that you can do really amazing things on any business if you have, first of all, the right team,
Mhm.
and second of all, that you have really strong relationships. And I believe that comes from building trust. And how do you build trust, right? The best way to build trust is to really spend time with people and encourage them to spend time with each other. So it's not just me and my individual team members, but I encourage my team members to really get to know each other, and it's beyond just at work. It's really get to know the whole person.
Yes.
And why I think that's so important is sometimes you're going to be really faced with a lot of stress, and sometimes you're maybe going to have to give somebody negative feedback or just constructive feedback. And if you've established a really strong working relationship, it's usually taken in the right way. It's not taken in the wrong way. It's no, I know that Leah cares about me, and she wants the best. So if she's telling me something that I may not want to hear, I'm going to have an open mind because I know that she wouldn't say it to hurt my feelings, or you know what I mean. So and I mean, even if it's just breaking bread together, that goes a long way in terms of really building that trust. And if you have that coupled with sort of something that a vision that inspires people, they really will do anything to move mountains. And that's what I've learned throughout my career is, that's the secret sauce is building a very strong team and a really high performing team, kind of the way we interact.
Oof, that trust element, I hear that so profoundly for you. And oh, I have lots of questions to riff off of that with, but one question I have, there's such a debate right now about how we even physically show up at work. does the hybrid situation work? Does remote work? Do we need to be in person? There's so much debate on this. And for you as a CEO, I'm wondering what your thoughts on that are, how we do build trust. Do you feel like that needs to be done in person? Can we do that remotely? What are your candid thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this working from remote is really the new normal. But I do think that it is very important to have the face-to-face time with people. I mean, you really can't get to know a person over a video. Like you get part of that person, but then when you meet them and you spend time with them, you kind of it's like 3D, right? You really understand the person a lot better. So I encourage the team. So we have something at in Buffalo, which is where we have many of our team members, Buffalo, New York. And so I love to give people the freedom of working from home. And I've always been a big believer in working from home because you easily spend 2 hours a day commuting, which is not a good use of your time. But I wanted to really encourage everyone to come together on a regular basis. And we started it by having tacos. We basically had free tacos for everybody. We have this amazing Mexican restaurant across the street, and so like everyone comes in for Taco Tuesdays. And because otherwise, I mean, I've seen companies where they say, you need to come in 2 days a week, but I've heard a lot of people say they come in 2 days a week, but there's no one there. So they're kind of like checking the box, and that's not really the goal of it. I think the goal is to really, just continue to build those relationships, and you can have a very robust brainstorm. You can get a lot done in person. So I do think that working remote works, but you need to have a balance.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think having these hard and fast rules of you got to be in your seat X amount of days. Yeah, okay, what's the actual follow through on that? Are we actually connecting? So it sounds like for you, there's such intentionality with it. You're building community around it and really building those people connections. So I love that. And hopefully that's something we'll continue to see more of in 2023. Um, so much of this show, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. So much of this show is talking about how we can make workplaces more mentally healthy, more mentally safe, where people feel really supported in the workplace. And I'm wondering, as CEO, how are you creating a mentally healthy workplace at Delica? How are you helping create that for your employees? I'd love to hear more on that.
Sure. I think that that's very important. It's a really good question. And, I think what I try to do, which I think makes people feel secure, is I'm really candid and transparent about whatever we face. And I let them know, this is probably, I don't know that I should be sharing this, but this is what I know, and that what I'm carrying on my shoulders. And if you're on my team, then I trust you, right? And so I am very transparent of what's going on and what I'm thinking, and I think also giving people feedback, because a lot of times people are I guess they're insecure or uncomfortable because they don't know where they stand, and part of that comes from a lot of people are non-confrontational. Not to say that feedback has to be confrontational, but they'd rather avoid giving feedback. And so I try and give feedback actually whenever I see it, right? Yeah, it may not be in that moment because it may not be appropriate, but I act on it and I don't keep it inside. And so people always know where they stand with me. And I encourage, my direct reports to do the same with their team. And so we have a very transparent environment, and it starts from me just being open and honest with them in terms of what's going on, but then also giving ongoing feedback on a regular basis, so no one's guessing.
Oh, I love that. I think that transparency is so huge. And I completely agree with you. I see feedback as being something on both sides of the equation that people get really squeamish about. For people listening to the podcast today who are in a role of giving feedback, and we all are, no matter what title we have at a company, even in our personal lives, inevitably we can and should give feedback to friends, to loved ones. It sounds like this is something you've developed some expertise with. What advice do you have to help people give feedback? How do you think we can do that in an effective way?
Well, going back to my earlier point about building trust, I think that that goes a long way in making it a lot easier, right? So spending time with people and really getting to know them, because no one person is the same, and certain people like to be dealt with in different ways. And if you take the time to get to know people, then you'll know what makes them uncomfortable and
Yes.
what makes them more comfortable. Is it better that I, give you feedback in a meeting? Well, some people are comfortable with that. They're extroverts and, they think out loud and it works for them. Other people are like, oh, that's devastating for you to give me feedback in front of other people.
Mhm.
But without really knowing that person, and taking the time to understand what makes them tick, then you won't know that. And then the second thing is that, again, building that trust so that they understand, that even if you deliver it sloppy or it's not perfect, it's not eloquent, they know that it's coming from a good place
Yes.
because you've taken the time to build a relationship with them.
Mhm.
And it's almost like family,
Yes.
uh, you don't really think that much about giving somebody your best friend or your partner, feedback, because you know them, and even if you fumble your words, they're going to understand, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes, yes, absolutely. And on the flip side of that, we had a guest on the show yesterday, actually. Everybody listened to Jenny Blumenthal's episode. She was talking a lot about how she's been noticing more and more people reporting that they feel psychologically unsafe in the workplace, that they're afraid that if they give feedback as an employee, they're really going to either get shot down or they're going to suffer negative, serious consequences. And I see that with a lot with my clients too, where they're miserable, they're frustrated. And I say, well, can we give some constructive feedback to the team about this or to your boss? And almost always the answer is like, oh God, no, like I can't say anything. I just have to suffer silently through this. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on folks who are on the other side of the table who they want to give feedback, but they feel like they're not in that position of power to be able to do so. What do you think for those folks who may be grappling with how to give feedback?
I think that it's one of the things that I do often is because there are a lot of people who are just in general more introverted and they're less comfortable expressing their ideas, even if it's not feedback. But sometimes they have some of the best thoughts, the most insightful thoughts in the whole company, right? And so I really try and create a platform for them to be comfortable expressing their ideas, even if it's just me asking. And they come to know it. Like, we were talking about some of the new products that we're launching on Niagara Chocolates, and in a brainstorm session, and I felt like we were all sort of gravitating towards a few ideas, and there were a couple people that were quiet, and so I reached out and I'm like, what do you think, John? And tell me if we're all sort of in love with our own ideas here, and that we're maybe missing some big idea. And so that's how I do it. By, is by asking people what their opinion is, and also making it known that that's what I do, right? So they know that when we're in a conversation and I really am valuing their opinion. That's the other thing, is you need to make sure that they know that you value their input. You may not necessarily take the advice, but you can't just ask them a question and then just sort of like move on. sort of like a token gesture. You need to really listen and show that you're listening. And so even if you don't agree with it, and that's, I rambled on a lot there, but I think at the end of the day is that you really have to have great listening skills and show that so that people feel heard. And if they feel heard, then they'll be more willing to express their idea, give feedback. The other thing, as you know, I always ask people, listen, give me feedback. Like, have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? Have you seen anything? Are there any complaints? Like, I think, I'm giving them feedback on an ongoing basis. So I'm encouraging them to give me feedback. And I'm hoping that they're doing that with their direct reports because, and I say this like all the time, feedback is a gift. Because you
Yes.
can walk around not having a clue about what you're doing, and you may not have an intention of doing what you're doing. And if it's a blind spot for you. And so if no one tells you, then you walk around. I mean, this is a funny example. Like, the other day I was in a meeting where it was a face-to-face meeting, and we ate through lunch, and I had a big piece of lettuce on my tooth, and like three people said to me, and I had no idea. And so, but they told me immediately, and I was like, that's kind of like feedback, right? It's like, that was a gift. I mean, otherwise I would have been walking around all day with a big green thing on my tooth, so that's my analogy.
I was thinking the exact same one, and yet it's amazing, right? So many people, we don't want to say something, and yet we want to know. So, I didn't think that was a ramble at all. I was soaking up every bit of what you were saying there. And hopefully that's something, for people who listen to the show that are in a role of leadership, ask for that feedback, invite it, and know that, teach people that it's psychologically safe for them to do so, that it's valued and not something punishable. I think that's something that hopefully we'll really see as a change moving forward. I want to shift gears here a little bit because my gosh, you have some amazing stats. I mean, hearing about Niagara chocolates, coming back from the company, where it was being double-digit declines to 92% growth year to date, that's outstanding. Clearly, you've got the magic recipe here. I don't know if it's motivation or strategy or what it is. Tell us a little bit about what happened inside your brain here that you were able to help you and the team get to this huge, huge stride.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm so really excited to tell the story because it was kind of like a dream come true, to be honest with you. It was a little scary because the business was in a downfall, and there were a lot of issues, not just the sales, like operationally, there were issues. Delica came to me, hired me, Migros, and said, and recognized that I've been in the market for a long time. I know the US market. The person who was running the business before was not from the US, they were from Switzerland. And they didn't really have a marketing kind of sales background. They were more of a finance person. So they said, listen, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're going to give you a blank sheet of paper, and we want you to tell us, what we should do with this business. If you say sell it all, we'll sell it all. If you say build a new brand, we'll do it. And so that was like a dream come true, right? So, and I was so well prepared for that. I mean, because I've been doing that my whole career, and then backed by a very large Swiss conglomerate. So, it's kind of like starting your own business, but not having to take the risk on. Although there was obviously certain risk, but not financial risk. So that was amazing, and I spent a lot of time listening to people throughout the organization on, what do we do well? What should we get rid of? So just really, I mean, the first like 90 days I spent just really digging into people, getting to know them, getting to know what they thought about the company. And I always do this when I first start a job, like 2 or 3 weeks in, I kind of like just kind of map out what I think the strategy should be, even though I don't have enough information to really build a strategy. Sometimes your gut instincts and and your experience, you kind of have the answers, right? But it's too soon for you to really have those answers. So I did that. And then I took all the information that I gathered over 90 days and pulled it together and created a strategy, presented it to Migros. They thought it was great. And that's, what we did. And one of the things that was really exciting about that is that I think part of it is like, I'm gonna say 20% of a strategy is actually the strategy, and 80% is the execution of actually making it happen. And so, it may not be, a perfectly brilliant strategy, because sometimes you can overthink the strategy. And 9 times out of 10, that initial thought that you had early on is probably right. But the thing that I really locked onto was where I saw their eyes light up, what they were really passionate about. And that is really what I kind of locked onto. And we had all these brands, and so they all seem to be like going in the wrong direction in terms of what consumers want, like just, in the artificial flavors and colors and, anyway, but we had this brand that was local, and everyone in Buffalo grew up selling this as a fundraising brand to raise money for their schools and their organizations. And so they grew up with the brand. And there were a lot of people in the company that grew up in the brand, but it was all local. And what I saw was like a product that was amazing, tasted great. It was all clean label. And it just needed a little bit of rework to kind of make it kind of reminded me of like a craft beer, but chocolate, right? And I was like, this would be great for millennials. Like, and it had like peanut butter and, toffee and all these different things that were handcrafted in the plant. And I was like, this is such an amazing story. And this is also what all the employees are passionate about. So I was like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take this brand and we're going to launch it. We're going to take it from being a regional brand to a national brand. And it's going to be more than a fundraising brand. It still is a fundraising brand. But we're going to see it in Walmart. We're going to see it in Publix. We're going to see it in Kroger. And people were so inspired by that vision. It was kind of like, is she crazy? But how cool would that be? And literally people just moved mountains because they were, number one, we built trust. And number two, we had a vision that they were excited and inspired. And then we got rid of focus on 10 different things. We've got everyone focused on one priority, and they moved mountains to make it work. And, now we're in Publix, we're in H-E-B, we're in Raley's, we're in Albertson Safeway. And so we've got this amazing line of, chocolate clusters and cups, and bars, that you really have to try. I'm so proud of it. It's amazing chocolate. We make our own peanut butter. It's lovely.
You've sold me on it. I really want for chocolate now. And I think everybody's going to want some after that. I mean, and it's funny, in the research I was doing for the show, I'm like, let me research Niagara chocolate. I saw so many YouTube videos of people like trying it out and taste testing it and loving it. And so what I hear from this too, Leah, you have such an ability to inspire and to get people to want to move mountains. I mean, gosh, I heard a 1-minute story about how you made this all happen, and I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. So I have no doubt you bring this to your team too. And so much of the show, we talk about the psychology behind someone's success. We have so many amazing people on the show, you included. You've had everybody go and look at Leah's LinkedIn profile. I mean, it's amazing. You've had an incredible career as the vice president of Campbell Soup Company, marketing director of M&M's. What do you feel like is the secret to your success with everything that you've done and how it's brought you here to this moment?
Oh, well, thank you for the kind words. And, I think that, let's see, one thing that you just saw, which is I tend to be very passionate.
Mhm.
about whatever I do. And, I make sure that I'm doing something that I can be passionate about,
Mhm.
something that aligns with my values and something that I feel that I can add value to. And I think that if you're genuinely passionate about something, it sometimes can be very contagious. The other thing is I've just always been myself. Like I'm always my authentic self. I bring who you see in the office is exactly who you see at home with slippers on, and you know what I mean, with my family.
I
I
love
am who I am.
I love that.
And yeah, I think, if you can be yourself, you are going to achieve a lot more than if you feel like you have to fit a mold. And you're going to limit yourself. And so I give that advice to people. It's like, you need to make sure that wherever you go from a company standpoint or job or starting your own business, it has to be a place where you can be yourself.
Mhm.
And you don't have to think twice about it. Otherwise, you're going to be half of your energy is going to be consumed in trying to be, that blue suit. You know what I mean? That may not
Yes.
be you. So, and even though, not to say that, like, listen, I've worked for some pretty conservative companies throughout my career, like blue suit companies. I'm myself. I'm myself in those companies. So it doesn't mean that the people have to look and act like you, but you have to be comfortable with being yourself in that environment.
Yes, own who you are. I mean, for people listening to the show today, just so you all know, I'm in a bright pink dress and Leah's in a bright pink top. So, no blue suits for us today. Not knocking it, but yeah, you got to step into who you are. And, I love that you bring up this idea of passion. And in some ways, I find it to be a debatable word because I work with a lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Zs, and they grow up hearing find your passion, find your passion. I think for some people, it comes easily of like, this is what it is for me. Other people have a really hard time finding their passion. And I would argue some people might say, like, I'm not sure I'm really passionate about anything. Like, I have trouble finding it. And so, what do you think this idea of passion? How can people find either one, what they're passionate about, or two, maybe if it's not passion for you, maybe it's another kind of purpose. How can we help people find more of that if they're struggling to really hone in on something?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, because, first of all, I don't think that there's one thing. And so you can't overthink it, right? I really believe that. And you will find your way
Mm.
over your career, right? You'll gravitate towards it. You kind of have to go with your gut, and it may not be the right thing at the time, but it will lead you to something great. Like you have to believe that. And so in the moment, I'm like, I'm not saying you should do something that you hate, but you kind of have to find something about what you're doing that you like and that you can be excited about. But it doesn't have to be that one thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, don't overthink it. And like I've had a lot of jobs throughout my career journey, and my first job out of college was I would I was a sales rep for Nestle.
Mhm.
I always come back to confections for some reason. And that was not on purpose, but chocolate too. And so like I never thought of myself as being a salesperson, and but the thing that I liked about it was that it was a great company name. They had great products, and they gave me sort of exposure to all different all functions within the company. So it was like a management trainee program, and then you went out and sold. And I literally took that job and was excited about it because of that, because I would get to experience, you know, time with supply chain and marketing and sales and figure out what I wanted to do because I really didn't know. I was a psychology major in undergrad. I was planning to be a physician. I ended up saying, okay, I don't think this is for me, but like I think I'll just go with this. And I found my way during that very first stint. I kind of liked doing a little bit of everything. Like that's what excites me, is like brand management is kind of, one day you're talking to the production facility trying to figure out how to save money on the line, and the next day you're working with your advertising agency, and the next day you're coaching a team. So it's like I kind of like the idea of doing many different things. And I saw that when I spent time with the brand management people on this management trainee thing, and I stuck in my mind, and I just kind of worked towards that, and I kept trying to find that kind of balance of doing multiple things as opposed to going really deep in one area. So
Interesting.
anyway,
Mm.
that's how.
That's great advice that for somebody who is feeling like, oh, I have no idea what to do next, looking for a position where you do get to kind of sample a lot of different things, taste test, if you will, to see what really resonates. Amazing. Great advice. Uh,
Thank you.
Wow, you've had so many experiences. I think it's just so cool. I mean, the Leah I'm sitting to talking to now, could she have ever foreseen everything that was going to happen when she was 20, 25? Like, what do you think looking back on this whole career you've had so far?
Yeah, no, I mean, I had no clue when I was 20 to 25, and I think that I was fortunate in in my journey of having great mentors and working for some really amazing companies that had strong values that sort of help shape who I am. And so that is another important thing. Like I work for a lot of privately held companies. I've worked for both publicly traded, private and privately held, kind of family owned companies. Like SC Johnson is family owned, Mars is family owned. Migros is not family owned. It's owned by the Swiss people, but it's privately held. And I realized that, working for a privately held company is different than publicly traded, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm not putting down publicly traded companies. It's just a different emphasis.
Mhm.
When you're working for the Johnson family, they want you, they want to make sure that you're going to have a Windex for their kids,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
you know, and their kids. And so they're encouraging you and shaping you to think longer term and think strategically. And sort of and really care about the business, like put you I mean like it's your own business.
Yes.
And it's because it's not about the quarter. It's, yes, it is about making profits, but it's it's about doing better for the business, and also doing better for the world, the environment. It's much bigger, and so that's where I kind of spent a lot of my time in my early career, and that's how I wired now, and I think it guides how I think and how I manage. So getting with the right company early on was a really wonderful thing, and I had no idea that I was going to be a CEO, or even wanted to be a CEO, quite frankly. And that's one thing that I is very different between men and women sometimes, not always, but like when people would ask the question, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? Early on in my career, I was like, I want to, get to the next position. I wasn't thinking like, I didn't have like a 5-year, 10-year sort of plan for myself. And some of my male counterparts were like, I want to be a CEO, or I want to be, an entrepreneur, or I want to be a CMO. And so I was like, wow, I just didn't think that way. I just wasn't wired to think that way. But what I ended up doing, because of the environment that was I said, you know what, I'm just going to pick something,
Mhm.
and I may not necessarily want to do that, but I'm just going to pick it and I'm going to work towards it because it's kind of like what they expect, right? And so I picked CEO pretty early on. I said president. I didn't say CEO. I want to be a president. And because we used to do these 5-minute kind of, what's your career plan in front of the president of the company? And so you sort of had to have a short term and a long term. And so you needed to have something. And
Mhm.
so I just picked it. I kind of made it up. And then all of a sudden, I realized I kind of picked the right thing early on. And so yeah. but I didn't really have an idea. I sort of picked it because I needed to pick it, and that seemed like a logical choice.
Well, and you did, and you made it happen, and here it is. It's
Yes.
absolutely incredible. And one question we always like to ask guests on our show, because here you are, the CEO, you're managing so much. How do you still maintain your own personal well-being? Do you have any personal practices that you do with exercise, reading, mindfulness, any kind of thing of wellness that you incorporate in your day-to-day life?
Absolutely. And I wish I had discovered this earlier in my life, but one of the things that I've been doing on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times in a day, is I meditate.
Mm.
Um, and I use it's a guided meditation, and it really helps to clear my mind and just it's just a look at yourself, from the inside out, and it sometimes gives me just much better clarity about what I need to do. And so I love that. I also have an amazing dog, Louie. He's a black lab, and he's lovely. He's right here. And he's a little spoiled now from working from home. So, because he's at my feet every single day. I don't know if I have to go back into the office on a daily basis. I don't know how I'll have to bring him with me.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So we walk, and, we take long walks. I also play tennis. So I think it's important that you have something that you're passionate about, like that is not work.
Mhm.
um, some hobby. And I started playing tennis, after my son was born, really just to lose some of the baby fat. But then I fell in love with it, and I
Oh.
was pretty good at it. And so yeah, I play 2, 3 times a week. Sometimes I play on a league competitively, and that's just something that I really love, and I won't ever give up. So,
Oh, I love that. You and I both with the tennis. You're
oh,
inspiring.
you're a tennis?
Oh yeah, I love tennis, but we moved to the Pasadena area a few years ago during the pandemic, and I just never found a good new home court. So now you're giving me motivation and passion to pick the racket back up. So,
Yes, absolutely.
oh,
Most of my friends are my tennis people. Like they're, like, because I spend so much time, and so it's not only good physical activity, but it's a social network as well. So it's nice.
100%. Well, my goodness, I could talk to you so long, Leah, but the last question I want to ask you before we wrap things up and tell people more about where they can get in touch with you and all that good stuff. I love finishing the show asking this with all of our guests. Leah, what do you hope your legacy is going to be?
I um I hope to make people that I am around, that I influence, whether it's, my children, people that I work with, that work for me. I want to inspire greatness in them. I want them to do things that are outside of their comfort zone, that surprises them, that they accomplish something that they didn't necessarily think that they even wanted to do, or could do. At the end of the day, I want to know that I've helped people feel better and do better, in all aspects of their life.
Mm, so beautifully said. And my goodness, I think you are inspiring greatness and you're living out. Talk about practicing what you preach. Like you didn't necessarily see yourself as a CEO. You named that, put it in the universe, and you made it happen. So talk about inspiring greatness. You're living out greatness. So
Thank you so much. You're so easy to talk to. I appreciate that.
oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we love doing the podcast. It's a blast for us. I love these conversations. They're life-giving for me. So this has been such a fun one today, Leah. And tell us where people can get in touch with you if you're open to that, like via LinkedIn, or tell people too how they can hear more about Niagara chocolates and what's on the radar there.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to reach me. And in terms of Niagara chocolates, check out niagarachocolates.com. and look for us. I mean, we're popping up everywhere. I was in Newark Airport and I was walking. I was pleasantly surprised to see us in the airport store, in a couple of the airport stores. So, keep an eye out for the brand and try some of our great new flavors.
Awesome. Well, Leah, thank you so much for being on the show. We wish you wellness in all things.
Thank you so much. It was very nice talking to you, Lauren.